Why do you feel you have to be anonymous?
It's for fear of reprisals professionally. This is my own experience. I mean, I'm entitled to, voice my experience as a human being and a police officer without, disclosing things that are sensitive. I would never do that. But um, yeah, the fear of reprisal is real. And I don't, I think that most Mounties, most cops would tell you that too.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a very, very special episode of Northern Perspective today. Law enforcement across this country are going through a lot, let's be honest. And unfortunately, as a result of the Liberals and their poor policies and senior leadership, they're getting a pretty bad rap along with it. And we've been able to connect with an individual that is actually working for the RCMP and has for over a decade. And this individual has decided that they can't just sit by and say nothing any longer. So we are very, very fortunate to have this person on with us today. And I won't be revealing his name because that would probably cause some problems for his career. So I'll just say, sir, welcome to Northern Perspective.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
So, we didn't stumble across you. You actually reached out to us, and can you just explain to everybody why you chose to do that and why you wanted to come on today?
Well, thanks, Ryan. I suppose that at this point in my career, in my life, I don't like what I'm seeing in the country, and I think we're heading in a very dangerous direction in the context of crime and drugs and repeat offenders in general. Um, I suppose part of my motivation was that I can't stand by and say nothing anymore, given that I operate in this world day in and day out, and I have for quite some time. And I think what bothers me is that this is not the world that I want to bring my children up in. I I have a huge problem with the state of this country and the overall flavor of safety and crime in this country. I don't think anyone could ignore it, and it's not a partisan issue. I follow politics, but I don't know how anyone could not look at this problem objectively and realize what a crisis we're in on so many fronts. Well, I don't think we're in a good spot. I've wanted to do this job my entire life since I was basically a kid, and I looked up to the Mounties as being larger than life and just revered, as you say, figure of Canadiana and just of law and order. And while I am still a proud Mountie, I've based my entire adult life behind this job and I believe in it. But I think that we've lost a lot of the luster and morale is suffering. And I don't know how serious of an organization that we look like to the average citizen. And I think that not only are people like me, frontline police officers, losing faith in the country, the system, the courts, the everything, but I can see this when I'm interacting with the public and they're calling us for help and assistance in solving some of their problems that they're having. And they are losing faith in us. And I don't know what else to do. And I can't even blame them necessarily for losing faith in us in the system because it's an abject failure. And I can't blame normal people for not picking up the phone anymore and telling us about things that happen to them or their families or things they need help with. And we're not in a good place. And I don't blame the RCMP necessarily, but I think we're in a crisis of poor leadership. And I suppose this is maybe a way that I'm trying to bring attention to the true scope of the problem that we're in.
Well, poor leadership usually is indicted via poor decisions, and poor decisions usually lead to poor policies. And this is what we're seeing from the Liberal leadership. And we, my personal opinion and other politicians' personal opinions is that the RCMP leadership hasn't really been making that great of decisions, especially those of great importance and who we don't prosecute in this country. But let's take a look at one of the decisions that Mark Carney didn't actually have to follow through with, which was the Liberal Gun-Buyback program. And despite all kinds of backlash from special interest groups, from lobbyists, from police organizations across this country, Gary Nandasangri and Mark Carney have decided to push forward with this gun buyback program. From your standpoint, is this going to help lower the gun crime in Canada?
I don't believe for 1 second that this is going to do anything to solve any problem. I think it's political low-hanging fruit, and I'm trying to be nonpartisan here about where my politics land, but I don't believe this is going to do anything. And I think we've seen as much with, this particular minister saying on a hot mic, if you want to call it that, that he didn't believe that this was going to address the issue. And as far as where I'm sitting, is that this isn't an issue at the street level. This is not, I can't even think of many occasions where I have encountered a lawful gun owner with a gun that was registered to them or they purchased lawfully engaged in criminal activity. It's not to say it doesn't happen. I think the statistics would bear that out, that it does happen sometimes, but the percentage of which is extremely low. And I've looked at the data myself. I try to be informed. I try to look at this, objectively, and it's very apparent to me that overwhelmingly the people that are committing gun crime are not lawful gun owners. I mean, the statistics bear that out. Uh, you know, I, for me and my colleagues, we're not seeing these quote weapons of war and all the things that they're sensationalized to be. We're not seeing that at the street level. We're seeing guns that are illegally acquired, people that are already in unlawful possession of these firearms, whether that be they're prohibited in the sense that they don't have a license, or they've been prohibited multiple times through the courts, being prohibited from banning or owning or possessing these weapons for 10, 20 years, life. This isn't the demographic that we need to worry about, and it's cheap, low-hanging political fruit that ultimately is going to do nothing. And I don't, I can't understand why we just keep going down this road and kicking the can down the road where there's no statistic that bears this out, that this is a problem that needs solving. There's other problems that could be solved. And this is a little outside of my area of expertise, but it's a known fact that the guns that are being used in crime are not sourced from lawful gun owners, and they're certainly not perpetrated by lawful gun owners. And this is a demographic that is highly vetted. These are good people. I interact with these people at gun ranges, and they're good people, and they've done nothing wrong. And matter of fact, this is a demographic that me and my colleagues fall into as well. And we own these things, whether it's AR-15s or whatever it might be. I mean, that's the one that's demonized, but this isn't an issue as far as I'm concerned. It is the ownership of these firearms. So I don't believe that it's going to make any bit of difference. And the ones that we do catch with guns on the streets, they're not part of these ban lists. They're not lawful owners. These are lifetime criminals that are going to source guns in the illegal stream, and that's not going away. And I don't see how this is going to address any of that, and they have to know that.
Yeah, yeah. And that that actually leads to my next question, because you address the fact that um, that it's not going to help, and you addressed the fact that we have very very stringent gun laws in Canada. No, despite the fact that the mainstream media and the liberals would want Canadians to believe that we have similar gun laws to the United States, and that's why all these guns are dangerous, which couldn't be further from the truth. But when Mark Carney, the Prime Minister, and his Public Safety Minister, Gary Nanisangri, give these directions out, um, what is the RCMP leadership communicating to the officers? And is there a disconnect in what the officers think and what the RCMP leadership is actually communicating?
Well, that's an interesting point. I haven't heard much of anything from anyone high up on this, which is perhaps a statement in and of itself. And I don't want to come on here and bash this person or this politician or that. Like, that's not my motivation. I didn't. I'm not comfortable even saying these things, but I think people have a right to know is that there is a huge disconnect. And I think if you asked any street cop whether or not uh, this is something that they want to participate in or willing to participate in, I think the answer would be no. But I mean, over and above the uh, whether or not they agree, uh, in terms of their morals or values, or whether they agree or not, is that this is inherently going to create a dangerous situation for police officers to, including myself, to be tasked or ordered to potentially attend people's homes and seize their property. That's not a situation that I'm going to put myself in for risk to my own well-being. I mean, this job is dangerous enough as it is. When we have to worry about the criminal element on the streets, and I'm not suggesting that anything that lawful gun owners would do or anything, but I mean it creates an unnecessary conflict and an unnecessary risk to us and lawful gun owners, and there's a huge disconnect, and ultimately I don't know if we even have the capability to carry something like this out. I think that you're going to find a very limited buy-in from people on the street that are willing to not only engage in something that's morally wrong, but that is physically dangerous as well. So I think that's my take on that.
And other than gun bans, there hasn't really been any significant changes when it comes to gun legislation in the last 15, 20 years. But yet we see the violent crime rate increase by 50% or almost 50% since 2015. We've seen a dramatic increase in extortions. We've seen increases in many other types of crimes. Now, some of the higher ups in police leadership across the country, Toronto police included, their response is, oh, well, crime is going down overall. Well, you can use that as a talking point, but just because crime itself is going down, maybe jaywalkings are going down, maybe petty theft is going down, and all of these things, but the real scary crimes are increasing. And this is where the conservatives have argued that all of this is a result of the legislation changes to the criminal justice system that Justin Trudeau and the Liberals have put in, and the Carney government still has yet to change. And it all boils down to a few specific changes in the criminal code, but one of which is the principle of restraint, where judges are required in their deliberations when they're reviewing bail cases or sentencing to, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's pretty close to this, to release the accused at the earliest opportunity under the least onerous conditions. Do you think that that legislation has contributed directly or indirectly to what you are now seeing on the streets?
Well, it's obvious to me that this is a direct contribution to what we're seeing on the street. Um, I'm not a lawyer. I have a grade 12 education, but I have been a cop a long time. And I was doing this sort of work before, well, into the mid 2000s. And um, the difference between now and call it call it 20 years ago, maybe more, right? Let's just say pre 2015, and the difference is market. And this bill was introduced a long time ago, but the principles of it and the meat of it, in my view, is contributing directly to the chaos that we're seeing. And I'm not sure what else to say about it, but it's a problem. And I think what bothers me is that it's not hyperbolic at this point. It's not sensational. It's not one party trying to weaponize it against the other. Um, it's a serious problem, and we're seeing it again and again and again. And I don't know. Um, I don't know where we're going as a country, and I'll just talk on the bail front. We can't keep the bad ones in, and I think that bail works for 95% of people. It manages them. This is the demographic of you and I and just normal folks that exist day to day. Like bail manages most people, whether that's to appear in court or to abide by certain conditions. That manages most people in the same way the speed limit does. Most people respect that, but there's a healthy swath of the population, not a huge number, but a low percentage of people that we deal with, but they do a lot of damage. Is that they're gaming the system, and they know that there's nothing going to happen to them. They're probably not going to get remanded. They're probably not going to get detained. They're probably not going to face any measure of deterrence into committing any sort of crimes. You're seeing this in uh, Ontario with repeat auto thefts and break-ins and shootings, and we're seeing this in the Lower Mainland with extortions and just this is third world behavior. I don't know what else to call it, but this is not, in my opinion, the climate that a first world country should be accepting. And I don't know how many more people have to be injured, have to be killed by these people for us to wake up as a society and put partisanship aside. And it just, for people to really, and when I say people, I mean the ones that are the ones making these decisions and the ones that are capable of reversing course that just, in my opinion, refuse to do so. I don't know how many more lives it's going to take or how many people are going to be victimized. And I've gotten just so fatigued of speaking to victims when I shouldn't even be speaking to victims having been victimized by these people again and again and again. And like a lot of these instances were completely preventable by keeping just the absolute worst actors in society incarcerated. And this isn't to say I think everyone should be imprisoned. I'm not saying that, but there is a number of people that are just they're truly bad people, and we're not going to rehabilitate them. And they have taken full advantage of this lax system that we have allowed to flourish at this point.
So you said earlier that you joined the RCMP because this is what you wanted to do. You wanted to protect the community. You wanted to lock the bad guys up. And it's interesting because I think, again, I go back to when we were younger. As little boys, we almost looked at police officers and the RCMP as kind of superheroes, right? Because they would go out and they would chase the bad guys, put themselves in harm way, and keep people safe and make sure that our communities are safe. So now that, let's just say that your superpowers have been taken away, what is the general feel on the force, either in your detachment or in people that you've talked to across the country that are part of the RCMP? What are people and the officers that are on the front lines, what are they going through mentally, emotionally, and do they even consider themselves effective police officers anymore?
Well, that's a great question. I don't. This isn't a situation that's unique to the RCMP. It's every police force in Canada, North America, for that matter. Uh, I think the general feeling is just one of demoralization and just the futility of doing what we're doing. And like you said, I I chose this occupation for a reason. As much as I say chase bad guys, but I like helping good people and I like being a good person. I'm not perfect. But I do feel that my lot in this occupation is one of, I want to find the worst people and hold them accountable. And at great personal risk to me, my family, my whether that's civil liability, criminal liability, um, it's a great personal risk to me. And this is something I believe in strongly. And I feel that I've had success with this over the years, and in terms of being an effective police officer. But I do think that a lot of us are questioning the point of doing this any longer. Not only for the the very real possibility that, well, that I've seen in with my own eyes so many times I've lost count. There is no deterrence to commit criminal activity in this country. Um, whether that's drug trafficking, whether that's firearms offenses, extortions, homicides, there doesn't seem to be a lot of deterrence to really do anything. And we have put such a low value on human life um, through the courts. And, I'm speaking a little out of school criticizing the courts, but I think we're way off track. And that's what I'll say about that. I do respect the court process and I take it seriously, but we have gotten to a point where um, there's not enough reason not to do crime. It's financially lucrative, and more or less, you're probably going to get away with most things given how complex investigations are and disclosure and getting over the bar to a conviction. Um, it's we need to drastically change something. And because I think at this point, and I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, is that we are losing this country, Ryan. And I show up to work and I see it every day, and no one is talking about it. And this is why I was compelled to say what I'm saying is that, and I'm not going to say anything inside baseball here, but it's a serious problem. And I just want someone in a position of authority to do something to change it.
Given that you're not disclosing anything that I would say is, a breach of national security, that is a breach of trust with the RCMP, why do you feel you have to be anonymous?
It's for fear of reprisals professionally. I'm not, this is my own experience. I mean, I'm entitled to, voice my experience as a human being and a police officer without, disclosing things that are sensitive. I would never do that. But, um, yeah, the fear of reprisal is real. And I think that most Mounties, most cops would tell you that too.
So do you fear that, criticizing the state of the force, criticizing the policies, um, that would lead to possible reprisal?
I think it would. Um, and I realize this is probably a bit of a half measure in that, I want to help change the course of everything, but it's a risk to me. But if that happens, so be it. At least I had some courage of conviction to at least say something and not stand by while this country is destroyed, frankly. It doesn't take really an intelligent person to look at any city, any town, anywhere in the province, whether it's Alberta, Ontario, BC, it doesn't matter. You can objectively look at this and realize that we are in a bad spot. And if this costs me this occupation, if this costs me, some sort of reprisal, I don't know what that would look like, but that's something I'm prepared to deal with because at least then I would have some measure of conviction to at least tell the truth for once, because I think there's such an absence of truth telling. in government, obviously, and just in society as a whole. We're afraid to tell the truth for fear of backlash.
And you took an oath as an RCMP officer. A lot of Canadians may not know what that is, but for everybody's benefit, what was that oath? And do you think that you're able to live by that and uphold that oath based on the tools and policies that have been forced upon the force?
Well, it's getting more difficult, and hence why I'm talking to you is that I don't know. It's when I signed up to do this, this meant something to me, and I took it seriously. And I've put my life on the line more than one time, and I have scars literally to show for it. And I have done my part. I have contributed. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And I don't feel that the other knots in the rope are doing what they're supposed to be doing, whether that's politicians, whether that's government in power, whether that's the courts, whether that's Crown Council. I feel like the guys and girls on the ground are doing what they're supposed to do with great risk to themselves at this point. It wasn't always like this. There wasn't always a fear of being victimized by criminals or killed in some cases. I mean, we've seen instances of that. uh, Numerous occasions, whether that's Greg Petrocelli, just to name one. Uh, you know, at what point do police officers say enough is enough? And I've seen this with colleagues of mine where they just, one day, they just leave out of nowhere. And these are great cops. These are cops that you want, if you called 911, you'd want these guys and girls showing up, because those are the people that are leaving and have had enough of this occupation. And I am concerned that when that generation and that demographic of police officer has had enough, well, I think we're in deep trouble. Because when I got a badge in my hand and they sent me off into the world to maintain the right, as we say, right, uphold the right, or pardon me, maintain the right of society. It's literally written on the side of a police car that we drive. Maintenant la droite, maintain the right. And I don't feel that we're doing that. At least not everyone's doing it. And I do wonder the futility of this mission, for lack of a better term.
So, what are you seeing from a fentanyl and an opioid crisis perspective? Because this is obviously dominating conversation, not only in Canada, but the United States. And we've had investigative journalists on the show that are not associated with each other that are coming to very similar conclusions, that we have Mexican cartels setting up shop in Canada, other cartels from Latin America, China shipping in fentanyl or fentanyl ingredients, and the Chinese triads gaining a foothold in Western Canada, in Vancouver. Um, is this all sensationalism, or is this something that's actually happening based on what you've seen? And do we need to really pay a lot more attention to what's going on with our fentanyl crisis?
Well, the opioid crisis, as they've called it, has been declared for a long time, at least 10 years. I'm not totally sure, but maybe it's just the demographic of people that I spend time amongst, and I'm at the street level. So yeah, this is a colossal crisis, and it's really shocking to me that this is where we've ended up as a Western society, is that we have people addicted to lethal drugs that are. We have cities that look like zombie sets, and I'm not saying that as an insult to anyone that's on the street. Like, far from it. These are human beings on the street, and no one is choosing this lifestyle. No one wants to live that way, more or less. Like, maybe there's some that do, but this is a massive problem. And I remember when I was a kid, you would be shocked if someone smoked a joint on the street. Like that would be shocking in the community that I grew up in. Even drinking in public, like that was very kind of outside the norm. And now I have a few kids, and for me to have to explain this to my children is just, it's Orwellian. I don't know what else to describe it as, but these are tremendously sick people that and I've spoken to them personally as just on a human to human level on just the absolute difficulty of getting out of it. It seems just completely hopeless. And fentanyl has become as ubiquitous as cigarettes. Is I'm not shocked to see it. We don't see hardly any other drugs at the street level. It's all fentanyl, maybe some methamphetamine. I don't remember the last time I saw heroin. Some crack cocaine is coming back, but this isn't. I don't know how we got here. It's just, and I think now people are realizing that we are fully the frog in the pot of boiling water, and I don't know what we're going to do to get out of it, but something drastic has to occur. And whether that's involuntary care, again, I'm not that smart of a person. I don't have a degree. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer, but I don't know how anyone can look at the situation and think that this is normal or acceptable for a first world country.
So, given all of these challenges and a lot of systemic issues, which you've seen and outlined, given the probably the untold crisis in Canadian law enforcement, which is a severe morale problem, and we sound like we are in danger of losing the last effective officers that we have. What is your message to the politicians in Ottawa, to RCMP leadership, to the Crown prosecutors, and to the courts, if you had to summarize that?
That's a great question. I would say that come back to reality. It's take take partisanship, politics. I think a big one is the unwillingness to admit you're wrong. No one likes to admit that they were wrong. I certainly don't. It's not a comfortable thing to say that your decisions led to bad outcomes. I mean, I made those mistakes numerous times in my life. It's never an enjoyable experience, but I think the architects of these problems need to look in the mirror and just really take stock of our towns, our communities, our cities, and just really look at like, okay, this is a problem that needs solving. People are being in the context of fentanyl and such. People are dying like every day, like on the street and in terms of bail and crime, people being victimized and killed daily, but it's often, and we're seeing these just horrific news articles about this person on bail did this and that person got killed by someone who was out on bail. I I just want someone to really just be the adult in the room, and regardless if you were the architect or not, to fix it. And because the problem is just there's no one that doesn't believe that this is a problem worth solving wherever you fall politically. It doesn't matter. But I think we all deserve to live in safe communities and that are free from violent individuals that are intent on victimizing people or just using crime as their occupation. My message would be to just do something.